Here's another demo reel for Dragon Age Inquisition characters starring Sarah, Cassandra, and Vivienne. This reel consists of banter between Cassandra and Lady Vivienne. I am curious, Cassandra, why were you not at the conclave?
Leliane and I were delayed returning from Kirkwall.
A rather fortunate delay, it turns out.
I am not so certain. If we had only...
You must not blame yourself, dear. You have done all you could and more.
Thank you, but I suspect I will be telling myself that for years to come. You are not from Orlais originally, Vivienne?
Neither are you, clearly.
I ask because of your accent. I would have thought once you joined the court.
That which makes you different can be a burden or a source of strength, my dear, which is up to you.
I wish someone had told me that when I was younger. I assume your parents were Rivain, Vivienne?
They were merchants, originally from Dismude, or so I'm told.
You don't remember?
I was taken to the Ostrich Circle when I was very young. So far as I'm concerned, my life began there. My dear Cassandra, I am impressed with how well organized the Inquisition was in the aftermath of the conclave.
It was chaos. I would hardly call it organized.
Perspective, darling. The Chantry hasn't even found the right vestments for issuing a statement on the Divine's death.
Being more flexible than the Chantry is not a difficult goal.
Take your victories where you can, dear. Were you well acquainted with Divine Justinia, Cassandra?
I cannot claim to have known her well. Few can, except perhaps Leliana.
I envy even your slight acquaintance. By reputation, she was a formidable woman.
Justinia was a visionary. The Grand Clerics would never have chosen her had they known her intentions. And now they will never find someone to fill her shoes.
Oh, they will, darling, even if they have to trim off her toes and heels to fit. My dear Cassandra, whatever persuaded you to bring Varric to the conclave?
I wanted him to testify about the events of Kirkwall to the Divine.
He wrote all that down, did he not? He didn't need to come in person.
The Divine also wanted him to autograph her copy of Hardin Hightown.
I wonder, Cassandra, that you did not put yourself forward to lead the Inquisition while Divine Justinia was forming it.
The Divine wanted a heroic figure all of Thedas could rally behind.
How do you fall short of that description, my dear? Did you not single-handedly save the capital of Orlais?
That was hardly single-handed, Vivienne, yet still heroic. Many in the Empire remembered you fondly. A perception that would last until the moment they met me, I assure you.
So you are 78th in line to the Navarin throne, Cassandra. That is rather far off. Even so, many enjoy the idle life afforded by the most distant of titles. You could have been provided with every luxury if you remained in that life.
I am ill-suited to finery, Vivienne. Besides, I can accomplish more as I am now.
You pursued duty and responsibility, a path that took you next to the sunburst throne. Well played.
I tried to do the Maker's work. Where I stand while doing so is unimportant.
You must admit, it does help.
You've adjusted to the Inquisition quickly, Vivienne. We must lack many of the luxuries in which you are accustomed.
One does not survive the Orlesian court without learning to adapt, my dear.
Skyhold is hardly the Orlesian court.
You needn't tell me that. We all have our little sacrifices. You know, Cassandra, you really ought to have armor with gilding, or dragon scales, preferably both.
Would that not be impractical?
It would be dramatic, my dear. Half the value of armor is intimidation.
I prefer the half that keeps blades out of my innards, personally.
Cassandra, you do know they still tell tales of the dragon attack at Val Royal?
I am aware. I'm also aware they grow larger with each retelling. Many yet live who saw it with their own eyes. From what I've heard from so-called witnesses, I have to wonder.
You are too modest, dear. You could have parlayed that victory into more than a position at the Divine's right hand.
If I was someone else, perhaps. I simply did what I needed to do.
You are too modest, Cassandra dear. To many you are a figure of all. You should make use of that.
I use it in the service of the Inquisitor when I must.
But you don't seem to enjoy it. You really ought to have more fun, darling.
How is manipulating and bullying people supposed to be enjoyable?
I assure you there are few pleasures comparable to restoring order with one's own hands. You've done a fine job thus far, Seeker, but you could stand to be slightly more amiable.
Were you not suggesting earlier I should be more intimidating?
Of course, darling. One must never be too charming or people lose respect. Too intimidating, however, and you'll never be invited to anything. Then you may as well be dead in a ditch.
If I'm never invited to another Elysian salon, I will consider that a success.
The game is played to the death, my dear. Like it or not, you are part of it.
Do you actually see me playing the game, Vivienne?
Not now, perhaps, but you could.
Wearing ball gowns and painted masks? Decking myself in jewels and curtsying to suitors?
It is a battle, my dear. The armor and the weapons differ, but just as much blood is spilled.
I never thought of it quite like that.
You are a warrior, Cassandra. You will be one whether you dress in steel or lace.
I've thought about what you've said before, Vivienne.
About my suggestion that you play the game.
The ball at Halam Shirel reminded me how much I hate all of it. Me? In a dress? It's ludicrous.
You don't need to prove anything, Cassandra.
Exactly. I do not trust any event where hitting someone isn't an option.
You're not a battering ram, darling.
I am when it suits me. Nobody expects a battering ram to wear a dress.
It's disappointing, but perhaps some battles should be left to those more suited.
My thoughts exactly.
So Leliana is a candidate for Divine. It's hardly surprising. She plays a pretty game.
She is also an intelligent woman with strong convictions.
Important qualities for whomever takes the Sunburst throne. The Divine stands apart. She must command respect and attention or she will accomplish nothing, which means we have two fine candidates. Wouldn't you agree?
The decision rests in the hands of the Grand Clerics.
Such modesty!
The Chancery needs to change, and I would see it done, but if I am chosen, then I pray it is the Maker's will and not ambition that guides me there.
You've made quite the impression at the Winter Palace.
When I punched the wall, perhaps.
Not the most distinguished impression, certainly, but given your discomfort, I expected worse.
I did not realize it took so little to exceed your expectations.
Come now, my dear, there's no need to be touchy. You'll do far better next time. I've heard your uncle is a Mortalitasi, Cassandra.
You've heard correctly. Necromancy is not uncommon in Nevada.
You must understand the rumors in the south surrounding Mortalitasi.
I've always found the practice morbid, but the stories one hears outside Nevada. Such fascinations reveal far more about the terror than the truth.
You must see the value in restoring the circles, Cassandra.
Providing they fulfill their purpose. Too many have suffered since the Mage Rebellion began, but we cannot ignore the abuses that prompted it. Without change, we risk repeating the events at Kirkwall.
Or recreating its opposite. An overly lenient circle is a comparable threat. Kirkwall is lamentable, but it is the blithe misuse of power, not restrictions, that led to the first blight.
Vivienne, about you and Duke Bastion.
There is no need to tiptoe, darling.
You were together for a long time?
We were, yes, and I will cherish the years we had.
Are you...
More questions! My, aren't we curious today? Seeking guidance in the matters of the heart?
I only wish to express my sympathy, Vivienne.
It will be fine, dear.